This is WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana, and you are watching When It Was Real with noted wrestling historian, author, actor, and wrestling manager Nikita Breznikov, and pro wrestling author and podcaster Benny Scala. Found only on the Playa Entertainment Network. Arriba!
Arriba. All right, well, good evening, folks. Welcome back to When It Was Real, the show that celebrates the glory days of the WWF in the 1970s when professional wrestling was very real to us. Now, I am the Playa, Benny Scala. I'm just a Hamburg local from back in the day. But this other guy, he is the real deal. He's the one, the only Nikita Breznikov. Nikita, how are you, my friend?
I'm happy to be here. And let us remember it is September the 10th and what tomorrow will be to all of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we can toast tonight, not just police and fire, but there were a lot of civilians that died, not just the poor people that were during the impact, but stayed to help and then develop cancer and other complications through the years. So, thank you. God bless America. If you don't like it, well, then that's your problem, but we love it and we defend it.
Amen.
And with that, we're glad to be giving you part 2 of the history of the Tag Team Championship. And just so we're clear, the reason we're not so much repeating, but replaying, we were on another network, and it becomes difficult. Some people have expressed to me to find the old shows. So it's like, we're certainly not going to go back and redo everything. But this is one that, there's little bits and pieces that you can always stick in without a doubt. And so we're giving it another shot. But quickly, next week, everybody, a show we're excited for. Benny and I are going to present to you the three amigos, Johnny Rods, Davey O'Hannon, and Tony Garea, all at one time. And the reason is there was first matches in between with them and working together through the years. It will be, in my opinion, an epic show.
And they like each other, which is a great thing.
Like each other.
I would say they probably love each other. Go that far.
Yes. Well, Davey and Johnny have I'm sorry I don't have the address, but check it out on my page, my Facebook, and you'll find it. And they definitely, they're going to be making an appearance. They're all, friends. That's a great way. And family, love each other. Absolutely. I would not.
And, Nikita, it's funny what you said about, doing it again. Sometimes, I believe this is a subject where people can never get enough of it. I watched a Leave It to Beaver episode last week from, I think, 1962. So what, 63 years ago? Some things you like so much, it just never gets old, right?
Yeah, and I just posted it this afternoon. Today is the 70th anniversary of Gunsmoke.
Wow.
And the 50th of Starsky and Hutch. And it's like, it can't be. There's no way it can't be.
Now that you mention that, I watched a couple of shows on YouTube, ranked TV shows from, back in the early 60s. I was amazed at how many Westerns were in the top, say 10 or 20. Gunsmoke, Bonanza, what else? The Rifleman with Chuck Connors.
Rawhide. Yes.
Rawhide. They're just the Virginian.
Yes.
Yeah, people like that stuff.
For a while there, they dominated the TV screen without a doubt.
Wasn't there the Bat Masterson? I'm thinking of that one.
That was Gene Barry.
Gene Barry, right?
Yeah, with the top hat. And even F Troop counts as a Western comic.
Hey, man. What was the girl's name? Melody Patterson?
She became good friends with me over the years. We met.
Really?
We were in Michigan.
I wouldn't even say cute. She was stunning.
Even in later years. Because it was an F Troop reunion. We were doing a autograph thing for Motor City Comic-Con in Novi, Michigan. Wonderful people, all of them. Larry Storch. And it's funny, Joe Brooks, who played Vanderbilt with the glasses, We just saw him on something the other day, and I'm like, yeah, that's Joe Brooks. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's Vanderbilt Joe Brooks. Holy shit, man, he got around. So it was great. You know, people are. I like it when they don't get big heads. That's wonderful.
I couldn't even tell you, like, if you asked me, like, what is the top 10 TV shows right now, I couldn't tell you a single one of them. But
Me neither.
Yeah, I mean, we lived for certain nights of the week. Like, I loved on Friday night was the Partridge Family. I had the house for Susan Day, Lori Partridge for years.
I wouldn't have turned down Shirley Jones, I'll tell you.
Oh, hell no.
So like,
I don't think David Cassidy did either, did he?
My God. I'll tell you what, these are all good things because it must have been the era, because even sports, you know, like baseball, football, boxing, roller derby, ice hockey, and everything, it seemed like the 70s was just wild. It was absolutely, it captivated you.
Well, even, I mean, something they don't have now, all those variety shows like Ed Sullivan, you know, the Smothers Brothers, Glenn Campbell, Andy Williams, like they all had their own show, but they had great guests. You know, even when you think about it, like I was watching some Paul Lynde clips from Hollywood Squares. And when you think of the like those 9 squares, who they had, I mean, it was really a star-studded lineup.
His comebacks, I mean, I watched, they have it on YouTube, just like Paul Lynde comebacks, and it's like, man, he was hysterical. He was spot on.
I have to believe they gave him the questions in advance. Otherwise, he was the quickest wit that ever lived. But even so, like, even if he had the questions, he was just funny.
Yes, he was definitely a gem. We loved him.
Yeah.
Okay, people, I can hear you out there. We're getting to wrestling. And where we left off, the Indians. For anybody that gets offended, in wrestling, we don't use that word. That's like a punk sissy word. We say, look, that pisses me off, but it shouldn't. They were the Indians, Chief Jay Strongbow and Indian Billy White Wolf.
Even on the advertisements, a lot of times it would say Indian Jay Strongbow, right?
Yeah, because I used to say the Chief got demoted. Now he's back to being an Indian. He's no more Chief. But Vince used to correct him. Like when Madison Square Garden with Bob Freed sometimes would miss it, and Vince would say, Chief Jay Strongbow. And it was like, yes, Vince, thank you. But, okay, here we are, 1977, and they defeated the Executioners, and they're going like no problem. They're sailing along. And then what you were told, Benny, by Ken Patera, was that Billy White Wolf developed some type of cyst on his neck.
A giant cyst on his back, yeah.
Okay, so of course, they did the angle. It was May 24th. Patera, well, they set it up perfectly. The Chief and Patera had a war on May 16th in the Garden. 20-minute draw. Chief had a broken nose. He's bloody. They knocked Vince's table over at ringside. I mean, great ending. Chief's got the sleeper on Patera. The bell rings. Everybody thinks, oh, good, they beat that fucking Patera. And it's like, not curfew. That's like, son of a bitch. So the next taping, May 24th, I guess somebody was thinking, it's like, here's what we're going to do. Chief is in the first hour with Patera. And, of course, Luke gets involved. White Wolf hits the ring with the tag belt, busts Patera open. It's like, man, that's cool. Second hour, Patera issues a challenge. So he says, White Wolf, you stuck your nose where it didn't belong. So, of course, he accepts the challenge. The third hour, then we get Patera puts the swinging neck breaker on Billy White Wolf. He can't get out, and Patera won't release the hold. Wrestlers hit the ring, but not the Chief. And was like, where the hell is the Chief at? So they carted him off on a stretcher. Back then, the stretcher was just a little cot with sticks in it. You know, not like today's elaborate thing that opens up, almost looks like an escalator. So that was a nice way to segue out. Now, we didn't know it immediately. They didn't give it to us right away. You know, we're told there was a legitimate neck injury. But I guess they were alluding to the fact that, you know, the cyst, hey, look, if you got to have surgery to remove something like that, it's going to put you out of action for a while. Right. And White Wolf, you know, he was big in Hawaii, so he probably had a doctor or some kind of connections down there where, the wrestler's health care plan was their wallet that they sat on. So it's like, wherever I can get the work done for the cheapest price, I'll take it. So it was probably, and he could convalesce in Hawaii, and it probably was the best thing. But it was like, it's going to screw up the tag team title. So then they come out in June, and Chief does a heartfelt interview and says, Billy's out of wrestling altogether. He was trying to come back. They even mentioned at one point, Gorilla Monsoon came out and sat down with Vince at the end of a broadcast and said that White Wolf was trying to recover. And they said Steve Strong, a protege of superstar Billy Graham, was in there with him, and his neck gave out again. And he said, he's done. There's no way White Wolf will be back in wrestling. So they didn't know what to do until the August 16th taping. Willie Gilzenberg, a couple of weeks before Gilzenberg was brought out by Vince, and he says, I don't know. We'll have to have a meeting of the board of directors. We've never had this situation before, and we'll give you an answer in a few weeks. So August 16th, the first hour, we find out they're going to strip the title from Strongbow and White Wolf. And the Chief is there. And it's really wild because the Chief, when he's in the ring with other wrestlers, he doesn't look like a giant. But standing next to Vince and Willie Gilzenberg, he looks like Andre. It's like, and in person, it's like he's a big man. It's unbelievable. So he turns the belts over. So Vince says, now what will become of the tag team championship? And Gilzenberg says, well, we've decided on two teams. The Japanese team of Tanaka and Fuji, and Vince jumps in. They were declared champions. But Gilzenberg says, no. They must meet the team of Tony Garea and Larry Zbyszko 3 weeks from tonight, and the winner of that match will be the new champions. But what happened was, in between that time, now that's August 16th, the next taping was September the 6th, Tanaka gets his ankle, not so much, well, it may have been broken, but at least it was cracked or sprained by Haystacks Calhoun up at Witchy's on the 19th of August. And the reason we know this is because when you go back and look at the results, the next day, Fuji's wrestling with Moose Monroe, and then every night he's got another partner. Professor's on the shelf. He showed up at the Garden on crutches. So they come out for the first hour on September the 6th, and Fred Blassie says, okay, Garea and Zbyszko gets a stay of execution. When Professor Tanaka is ready to come back, and he will be back 3 weeks from tonight, that match will take place. And it was true. But the great part of it was that same night, Peter Maivia comes out with the Chief. And I believe that came to somebody's mind because Maivia filled in for White Wolf a few times. They had up in Bangor and a couple other places up north. And it was like, hey, this team can click. And no bullshit. I mean, excitement was just right. Everybody, I think they were coming every week to the TV tapings to see the two Chiefs. They were wild. They were colorful. They were crazy. They got along.
Oh, yeah.
And, talent galore. So it's like, okay, let's see who wins this tag team title match. So September 27th rolls around. And Tanaka and Fuji become the first 3-time tag team championship team in the history of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Professor was hurting. I mean, he wrestled in the Garden the night before. He had a couple of warm-up matches during the week, but you could see, I mean, he wasn't in tears, but pain was etched on his face. He was sweating heavily. And he was wearing boots, which, Professor.
He never wore boots.
No. So he had to have support. The ankle was not completely taped up like crazy. He was always heavily taped in the feet area. But this night, without a doubt, he needed the boots too. So the ending, they each get a fall, and Professor's on the outside because he submitted in the second fall to Larry's half Boston Crab. So as he's massaging his ankle, they start running the ropes. He scoops Larry. Larry crashes into the mat, covered by Fuji, and we got Tanaka and Fuji as the champions. And it's like, son of a bitch. Again, they're the tag team champions. But as always, they were just a great team and they carried it to perfection.
Yeah.
Of course, the Chiefs were their number one challengers. And the match they had in Madison Square Garden on October the 24th, which was the night that Superstar came back and had the Texas Death Match with Dusty Rhodes. I mean, their match, the Chiefs and Tanaka and Fuji, that went about 20 minutes, and it was fantastic. But see, they were building up Maivia too for the match with Superstar the next month. And in this match, the first fall, Maivia got cut open. Tanaka ripped off the buckle. Fuji throws him in, and they kept working on the cut. Maivia headbutts Fuji and gets a pin. And it's like, man, people are going crazy in the garden. They feel like they're going to win. The Chiefs are going to beat these guys. But then they start the second fall, and then they bring in Dr. Harry Kleinman from New York State Athletic Commission. They check Maivia, and he's like, nope, stop the match. He's bleeding too heavily. And it's like, son of a bitch. Even the Chief was pissed. So Chief takes Maivia back to the dressing room. He comes out. He's going to fight them. And it's like, Vince is like, I'm very confused here because Maivia should be in the ring. Strongbow should not be allowed to be part of this match at this point, but nevertheless, let's see. And then, of course, Chief was doing okay for about a minute or two, and then Tanaka and Fuji just started to murder him. Here comes Maivia back. He's all taped up, and he clears the ring, so it's like it made him look strong. So it set things up well for the next month. You know, Tony and Larry had a couple of good matches with them in different arenas, but Tanaka and Fuji held on to the belts until March 14th, when the new tag team, and I say newly formed, of Dominic DeNucci, of course not new, but Dino Bravo, who had just hit the Federation like a month or two before. I believe he came in with the January 31st taping. And, Dino Bravo looked great. Great physical specimen, 500-pound bench presser. He could drop kick. The women thought he was good looking, so it was like, man, you got a winner here. And put him in with Dominic, and they were magic together. They beat Tanaka and Fuji. The first match of the taping on March 14th in the first hour, they won a non-title match. So it was the same deal, though. Tanaka goes for the Cobra. Dominic ducks. He hits Fuji, and it's like, okay, blah, blah, blah. So the second hour, Fuji's wrestling Larry Zbyszko in a singles match. Freddie comes out. So Vince says, well, Mr. Blassie, what about it? A challenge has been issued by Dominic DeNucci and Dino Bravo. And Freddie says, that was a fluke. Are you kidding me, McMahon? He said, I don't feel they're worthy contenders. If you feel they are, it'll be on your head when they end up crippled up or go to the hospital. But we'll put the belts on the line. But I'm not responsible. Neither is Professor Tanaka or Mr. Fuji. Whatever happens to these two pencil neck geeks. Sure enough, they win the third hour. The airplane spin this time. Fuji gets hit, and Fuji knocked down Tanaka. Boom, cover 1, 2, 3. And you got the win, and it's like, yeehaw! And Bob Backlund had just become heavyweight champion. So, hey, we were happy in Worldwide Wrestling Federation land. Because now you got Backlund as champion, and I know all the controversy about Backlund and Superstar. We'll do a show on that one. Trust me, people. We'll get to that. I mean, that'll probably be a battle royal itself. We could bring Evan in. He loves to go into that, and other people. But, of course, we're happy, and then we got Bravo and DeNucci as tag team champions. But they did bring in the Golden Grams. The Lumberjacks had made the scene because the Federation, the Capital Wrestling, was smart. They would bring the new team in, get you implemented before the old team lost, whoever was going to be replaced, mostly heel teams. So it's like, okay, so of these Lumberjacks, like, fuck are the Lumberjacks, but okay, Scott Irwin and the other guy, Pierre LaBeouf, or whatever his actual name was, but they started showing us the Golden Grams. And it's like, wow, that's an impressive team. And you think about it, sure, Superstar is going after Backlund, but a lot of things could play off of Superstar and Crazy Luke as a tag team. Dusty Rhodes and Putski, Dusty Rhodes and whoever, Mil Mascaras. I mean, it was like the combinations are endless. But we got teased with it a few times because in Baltimore, these two, DiNucci and Bravo, defended the belts against the Grams, and Superstar got on the mat. He and Dino Bravo, they laid down and they arm wrestled. Of course, you know, it's Superstar before he was going to go down. Then Luke would come in. But they had a rematch in August. No title, of course, since Bravo and DiNucci had lost. We'll get to that in a second. But they brought that match back. And it's like, see, it's got some legs to grow. In Pittsburgh, the Grams went against Haystacks Calhoun, and I think it was Putski or I'll think about it. But it was like they played them in a couple of places, the Spectrum, but that was it. Nothing came of it until they hit the Garden. And then it was Putski and Andre the same night that the Lumberjacks beat DiNucci and Bravo. Okay, so, but what happened was it wasn't anything to set up any kind of tag teams title match. But what happened was Putski got bloodied by the Grams, and they never announced Dusty Rhodes even in the building the month before or that night. But they allowed Andre to go to the dressing room to take Putski back. He comes out with Dusty Rhodes, and it's like, oh, man, the whole place goes nuts, of course. So then that's when Superstar and Rhodes began the second half of their feud. First part was in 77, then the next part in 78. But the Lumberjacks that night beat Bravo and DiNucci. And it was a good match, without a doubt. Bravo and DiNucci dominated the match, no question. But I like the way it was done because both Dominic and Bravo had a large repertoire of finishing holds. So each time they were working on Eric. Abdominal stretch. Here comes Pierre. He breaks it up. Airplane spin. Here comes Pierre. He breaks it up. Here's he used to do what Jim Ross used to call the Russian leg sweep, which was fucking stupid. I don't know why they ever called it that. It's just like a reverse suplex where you would hook the leg and take him back. You know, here it comes Pierre, breaks it up again. This went on 4 or 5 times. Then finally, as the ref is pushing Bravo out of the ring, then they got a hold of DiNucci, threw him in, gave him a double axe covered pin. And it's like, damn. And of course, look, that was one of the best finishes to get somebody to get heat for a heel, is especially like if you're using a foreign object the whole match, referee doesn't see shit, and then at the end the face gets the object and goes to work on it, and then the ref all of a sudden sees it and disqualifies the face.
Yeah.
Like, man, they're ripping the chairs out of the floor. They're going crazy, you know. A great way to get people over. So this was very similar to that, and it was a one fall. Now this is when one fall tag team matches started to take place. Let me back up. When Bravo and DiNucci beat Tanaka and Fuji, that was one fall. Never happened like that before. Not just at the arenas, but on television as well. It was always 2 out of 3 falls. And you can usually pack a lunch and figure on 45, maybe 40, 35 minutes. Sometimes the 6-man would go almost an hour. So now we've got a change in that it's a one fall title change. And it happened again with the Lumberjacks. And it would continue on. There would be a few variations, but ever since that March 14th, when the Bravo and DiNucci beat Tanaka and Fuji, it became one fall. So again, they win it, the Lumberjacks, June 26th, but they never defended the belts that much at the Garden. They had one, it was supposed to be the Chief and SD Jones, but the Chief didn't make it, so Monsoon filled in. That was the July 25th card. But then that was it. When they would appear at the arenas, not just Madison Square, but everywhere, they didn't wear the belts. And there was some controversy about it. I talked to Tony about it one time, and because it was like, there's only one belt. No mention, was it stolen or what the hell happened? Or you left it at your grandmother's house or whatever. It's like, we don't know. But set up, and I'm going to say this till the day I die. Again, WOR was the infomercial for Madison Square Garden's upcoming card and presented on Championship Wrestling, because Monday night, October the 23rd, the Lumberjacks were going to defend their belts against the two Chiefs, which was really weird because they made Backlund and Maivia a team and were putting them over big time. And it was October the 10th when they had the big turn that Maivia turned on Backlund. And I was lucky enough October the 9th to see the final title defense of the Lumberjacks at the Capitol Center. And little did we know that would be the last night you'd see Peter Maivia as a face. And it was a damn good match. The Chiefs almost won. Of course, they didn't. But then the next night, they did the television taping. Maivia turns on Backlund, the famous "I'm going to kill that son of a bitch." And that was a great tag match. I thought Victor Rivera and Spiros Arion made a great tag team.
Yeah, no, they absolutely did.
I wish they could have done more with them, but that worked out very well. And then, of course, now that was done in the second hour, the turn with Maivia on Backlund, which would have been shown the Monday or the Saturday night, because WOR would come on midnight Saturday nights in New York. The following Monday, the Lumberjacks against the Chiefs. And when the Chiefs came out, Strongbow came out by himself. Maivia comes out to a chorus of boos, and Chief wouldn't even look at him. He was in his own corner. Finally, they bring him together, and they start arguing right from the opening bell, even before the bell. And then, of course, Maivia turns on Strongbow during the match. The Lumberjacks destroy Strongbow because he's left by himself. And then it's like, that was more, they gave him a bigger rub. And I think that's what really made the fans hate Maivia more so than the goofy Backlund thing. It's like, that didn't make any sense. Maivia and Backlund, it was okay, but they're saying that Maivia helped Backlund when he was in college and all these other things. And it's like, really? Backlund was an NCAA champion 2 times. It's like, this doesn't add up, but okay, we'll take it. But I do believe that when Strongbow was turned on by Maivia, that really just made him like public enemy number 1. And then the great thing about, and the most historic thing about the Lumberjacks, they were the champions the night that TV moved, the TV tapings moved from the Philadelphia Arena on Market Street to the Allentown Ag Hall on Chew Street in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which, if anybody's familiar with that area, I mean, every year you have the great Allentown Fair, and it's a doozy. It's not a state fair, but Allentown's a hell of a draw. Have you ever been around that region, Benny? You're East Coaster.
Actually, well, how far is Hershey from Allentown? Is it fairly close or no?
No, I don't think so.
That's the closest I got, I guess.
Okay. But it's a big deal. The Ag Hall, I mean, and this night, it was November the 21st, because you could see, like, the last taping at the Philadelphia Arena was Halloween, 1978, and it was really getting sparse. I mean, they were doing the best they could with camera angles and trying to get people to come up closer to, so it didn't look like you had this 8,000 or 9,000 seat facility with maybe 1,500 people in it. It looked shitty. You know, it just was like, oh my God, nobody cares. They did, but from what I'm told, it wasn't the greatest section of Philadelphia where it was located. And then it was tough to get there. Public transportation, I don't know, parking was a nightmare. And then TV, to me, I'm envious because I would love to have been there. Like our good friend Michael Mansky, he used to go to the bi-weekly show, the Philadelphia Arena. Now that used to fill. They would sell out pretty well, you know, not always a sellout, but close to it. And they would put on good cards. Plus, they would still do the TV. But then it just got to the point of, I guess maybe the building was too expensive too. As I tell you, one time I was looking at doing an independent show. I was helping somebody put it together. And for the Baltimore Civic Center, the guy, when I called up to get some pricing, he said, well, let me set you straight, son. He said, when we turn the lights on, it's $7,000. I'm like, holy
Jeez.
shit.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you want concessions and the whole routine, I said, okay. I think that's enough. I think this guy's going to run for the hills. Forget it. Because I'll tell you, when I used to work the ball games for the police department at Camden Yards, and we'd sit around and it would be like, okay, it's fucking raining. You know, this game's not going to go. You got to wait for the umpire to call the game. He's always in charge. Just like if you see a fight on the field, the police can't get involved unless whoever the crew chief is there for the umpires and he says intervene. Because, I mean, can you imagine going up and sticking somebody that's like a $8 million a year player? Or I guess today it's like 50 million. It's like they don't want the police involved unless it's absolutely necessary. So it's like we're thinking, okay, why are we waiting? We know that nothing's going to happen. But, you know, people come and wait for the game to get canceled. But if they fire up those ovens, that's money. And they turned on the lights. So I guess Camden Yards, the light bill I can't imagine, it's got to be probably $30,000. So they said they're going to wait for a couple of hours. Somebody finally alluded to me. They're going to try to make whatever they can from these people that are hanging around doing nothing, and they're going to eat. So they got to make something. So it makes sense. So I guess Philadelphia
I never
Arena.
thought of that before, but yeah.
Yeah, it makes good common sense.
It does, yeah.
You're an old bean counter, Benny, right? That's how they do it. So this night they wanted to start off Allentown with a bang. And I mean, it was filled to capacity. People were just one of the opening matches of the second hour was the Chief against Spiros Arion on television. It's like,
Great,
wow.
man. Yeah.
Holy shit. You don't see that on television. But so then they're going to have, they did a little angle where Tony and Larry came out to save SD. And I think maybe it was, maybe Dino Bravo when they're, and, you know, okay, the Lumberjacks issue a challenge. So they come out the second hour and they have the tag team title match. And of course, Tony and Larry. And the great thing about this was when they did the interview, and by this point, let me back up again. Bruno was doing the commentary. Bruno had started in Philadelphia. It was the 10th. They actually brought him in for the first hour on October the 10th, you know, introduced him. And it's funny because you could tell Bruno's wearing the same jacket he's doing for the promos for the upcoming October 23rd when he's going to wrestle Superstar. And Bruno fades out, and then he's not there for the second or third hour. But they said, oh, we'll be getting telegrams and, you know, people are clamoring to bring Bruno back. And I was like, gee, that's wild because, you know, there must be some fast acting telegrams. But anyway, Bruno's back October 31st. And from that point on, he's a regular for the next couple of years. So he's there that night for this title change. And again, there was only one belt that they held up. But at the ending was brilliant. And I got to give a public applause to the Lumberjacks and Tony and Larry. This had to be done. There's no way you could practice this. But it was a situation where they throw Eric into the ropes, and then Pierre drops down, and it's like, yeah, that's great. He comes back on the rebound, bang, gets hit, makes the cover, 1, 2, 3, and everybody's happy. And it's like, holy shit, that was a cool ending. There's no way you could rehearse that. No way. And you got to get it right, just like if you were at the theater. You can't fuck it up.
Like
You only
one
got
take.
one. That's it. One take, Jake. You got to get it right. And they did. It was beautiful. And, you know, it was a nice tribute to Tony and Larry. And they mentioned it during the interview afterwards. Vince brought him back at the end of Putski, wrestled a guy named Mike Masters or Mike Manson, who I think became Mike Masters. At the time, though, he had long hair. This guy was stiff son of a bitch, and he was shooting on Putski. And then Putski was like, look, he had to unload on the guy, and he did. I mean, he clobbered him. And it's like, what the hell is this guy's problem? But afterwards, they brought Tony and Larry out. And they said, you know, it was almost 1 year that we've been together, Vince. We stuck through the thick and the thin of it. And that was true. And that's what made it really a wonderful thing, even though the rumor was Dominic and Bravo were supposed to get the belts back. But Dominic got his ribs bruised the night before at the Garden by Crusher Blackwell. And that makes sense. Crusher Blackwell, I mean, he's a big man. He was very agile, but when he did that splash or that power slam, because if you remember, folks, if you were with us when we had Tony Gurria on, Tony said, Larry was on his way out. They said, see you, Larry. We're not going to be booking you. And then Monsoon came back and said, never mind. Don't pack your bags. We're putting the belts on you guys. And it's like, okay, that sounds great. I got some work for a while. That's, to me, it does make sense. It's probably how that played out. So, Tony and Larry and as a team, you could feel the friendship there, the legitimate. We could pick this up as fans. If somebody liked each other, if they didn't, you could tell that the camaraderie and the true friendship was there. That's why when Larry made his heel turn years later, bringing him in against Tony, bringing Tony back, and Tony coming out of the audience, and that was done well too, because Bruno says, Vince, I think I see Tony Gurria. And Vince is like, no, Bruno, I don't think so. And then at the end of the match that Larry was in, they introduce Tony, and it's like, yeah, I thought so. And then it was like they were talking. It's like, well, Tony, what brings you back to these parts? And he says, well, Vince, I've been all over Australia, Japan, and people are coming up to me and telling me about my partner. And I'm like, what? I don't know what happened. And it's like, he said, I couldn't believe it. I had to come and see for myself. And then a couple of weeks later, Larry turns on him. And that's when we get Tony on the outside. And it was shown the afternoon of the Shea Stadium match with Bruno and Larry in the cage. And Tony says, Bruno, do me one favor tonight, break every damn bone in his body. And to most people, it wouldn't make sense. It's like, what the hell is he talking about? But people in New York got it because they were going to see the show at Shea Stadium that night. But it was still great. It all worked itself out. So Tony and Larry are the tag team champions. The curse still hovers over the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Because don't forget, the Mongols leave, and they're like the Colts packing up and leaving Baltimore for Indianapolis. It's like, okay, that kind of worked itself out. Then we had Strongbow and King. They weren't getting along. They were able to fix that rather easily, no problem. Then you had the Valiants were fine, no problem. They stood for a year. And then with Victor leaving in the middle of his run with Dominic, it's like, okay, there's another part of the curse. Then you got White Wolf hurt. It's like, man, oh man, what the hell's going on? And then actually we never knew of it, but Bravo and Danucci should have won, but we were happy with Tony and Larry, and we were none the wiser. But then here come the Valiant brothers. And it's like, holy shit. December the 12th of 78, they appear on television. And it's like, yahoo! And it's Jimmy and Johnny. And it was wild because Joe McHugh at the intro announced them from Los Angeles, California. And Lou had a whistle by this point. He was blowing all the time that Vince wanted to shove up his ass, I'm sure. So Lou's waving off Joe McHugh, blowing the whistle. You could hear it off camera. He's telling New York City, they're from there. And Joe McHugh says, I have been corrected from New York City. And it was like, that made good sense. Making them from New York was just a perfect fit because I've got programs from Baltimore and other places from 74 and 75. They had them from Spokane, Los Angeles, all kinds of crazy places. But it made sense this would stick from New York City. So, of course, first hour, they annihilate S.T. Jones and Frank Williams. More so, they annihilated Williams more than Frank Williams. And that taping goes off without a hitch, no problem. But by the time they get to January, Jimmy, and since our good beloved friend will just say he took sick. He was not able to compete for a while. And it's like, son of a bitch, what are we going to do? All right, they're able to play it off for a taping or two because Johnny's in there against Larry Zbyszko was a single, like 1 of the 3 hours. That's it. And again, we're none the wiser as fans. But then it's like, look, this time Tony and Larry both have plans. March 6th, the belts are supposed to change hands. What the hell are we going to do? So it's like, all right, what we'll do is Johnny was the one, I'm told, that found Guy Mitchell, the Stomper. He knew him from Indianapolis and said, look, I think we can bring this guy in and he'll fit just like a glove or a shoe. He'll fit right in there. So the old man trusted Johnny. Vince Sr. is like, all right, bring him up. We don't have time to hold tryouts or auditions like they do in Hollywood. It's like, we got to do this on the fly. So in February, they bring in, and Lou plays it well. He said, I told you I had a surprise, Bumblebee. And here it is, Gentleman Jerry Valiant. Now, Jimmy was able to come out and at least make appearances, but you could see even when he had that jacket on, he looked kind of frail.
Lost quite a bit of weight, yeah.
He did, and he needed some time to recoup, which he would do. He would come back like mid-79, but he wasn't going to be like camera ready for March the 6th when the title was going to change hands. So it was like, okay. So we got Gentleman Jerry Valiant. They put him over. He was getting the pins in a couple of matches, he for the team to get the victory. And it's like, okay, this could work. So March 6th rolls around. March 6th, and then they beat Tony and Larry. It was a neat ending. I liked it. They were running the ropes. Larry gets shoulder blocked in the groin by Jerry Valiant. They go down. They're both like stunned, even though Larry's got the crotch shot, so he's rolling around, writhing in pain on the mat. Jerry's like, his head hit it, I guess, Larry's hip in the midst of all of that, or his knee, so he's stunned. So they drag Jerry out of the ring with the referee's back turned. Jimmy does that. Johnny crawls in, acting like he's the stunned Valiant. Then he covers Larry, and they get the 3 count. Well, man, people are not happy. And I'll tell you, they almost had the second riot at the Hamburg Fieldhouse, or at this time it's Allentown. And at the conclusion of the taping, and it was funny because Flying Fred Curry was in the ring, and he sees Vince with the microphone, and he kind of like looks in that direction thinking he wants to interview him. It's like, no, keep going, keep going. So Vince brings Lou and the Valiants back out. Now they're wearing the belts. Jimmy's out with them. And people, if you knew the Valiant brothers, they could start a riot without anything behind it. But you had something behind it because the tag team title had just changed. And with Albano, Lou gets in the ring. And by this point, the crowd that was leaving and hadn't exited the building yet, they got up to the ring, and they're starting to pound on the ring, and they're getting closer, and they're pushing their way closer to Vince, Albano, and the Valiants. And Vince is starting to get a little bit worried. He's like, thank you for your time very much. Thank you for your time. It's like, get the fuck out of here. These people are going to riot. So finally he says, Bruno Sammartino, come here, Bruno. Let's talk about this. So they bring Bruno out. Order is restored. They don't have a riot after all. But Bruno helped sell it. And Vince said, Bruno, I don't think we've ever had anything like this in the history of wrestling. 3 brothers. Well, they did with the Grahams, of course. But it's like it had been a long, long time. Now, they gave us some very good 6-man tags. Jimmy was able to get back his health, and together, because before Jimmy, they would put Lou with Johnny and Jerry, and that worked. No problem. You know that. Anytime you throw Lou in there, they're
Lou's
ready.
Always gold. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Just let's do it. But then when Jimmy got back, it was like, great. You got 3 brothers, and it worked. And a lot of times they would call it Valiant Brother Night. At the Spectrum, they had Jimmy and Jerry defend against Backlund and Putski. Jimmy went against, Jimmy was in Boston that night against Putski. So they kept that match over in Boston, and that worked out good. But then for August, they had Johnny against Backlund, Jerry against Andre, Jimmy was on the card, and they did it in Baltimore as well. Johnny against Bruno. For some reason, Johnny worked with Bruno to perfection. I mean, it wasn't always, there weren't title matches. Bruno wasn't champion either. Well, in 74, 75, but this time in 79, of course, he wasn't. But it seemed like Johnny would get the nod against Bruno all the time. And it's like, it's great. It works out perfectly. But the Valiant brothers, Johnny and Jerry, they didn't defend the belts at the Garden except for the last time when they lost on October the 22nd. And I'll get to that in 1 second. But the only time they were together, it was June 4th, and it was against Haystacks and Steve Travis, but it was non-title because it followed up the Battle Royal. That was the first night, the first Battle Royal in Madison Square Garden history. So it wasn't going to be a title match because it wasn't announced. And it was okay. But my point is the Valiant brothers just, I don't know, the Johnny and Jerry, to me, it didn't click. It was a good 6-man setup, but Jimmy and Johnny, please, if you're going to give me the Valiant brothers,
they were the true Valiant brothers.
Yes, they could read the phone book and have you entertained. Because you notice Jerry didn't do much talking on any of the interviews, the promos or anything. Jerry hardly spoke. Now, tomorrow, as we mentioned at the opening of the show, of course, God bless America. It was a dark day in the history of our country. But in 1979, they wrestled. It was a TV taping in Allentown. And this is where it started to begin, where the Valiants were going to split with Lou Albano. And they wrestled Putski and Santana, and that was awfully quick because they had just started teaming. And even Vince said this is one of the fastest rises in history that a team would get a title match. And it was a title match on television. It was a DQ. And the DQ was because Lou jumped in the ring. So the Valiant brothers are pissed. It's like, who gives a shit? It's a DQ, but they played it up so that Albano said, I'm done with the Valiant brothers after this. And he's ripping his own shirt, shoving pins, acting crazy. And he said, I'm through too with the Valiant brothers. And he spits and does the whole routine. It's like, that's great. You got to love that. But the craziest thing is, this is what we're doing tonight, what I mentioned last week and this week. They did like a repeat of it. Because if they had just done that the night before, you could have shown that at the airing, when the TV market was going to hit. But they did like another run of it where Lou comes out with the Valiant brothers. They beat Pete Sanchez and I think it was Frankie Williams. And it's like Lou's there, and then Lou's like he's disgusted, and he walks off, and Johnny's hollering, what do you want? More money? Is that what you need? More money? It's like, this doesn't make sense. Why are we having an instant replay of what took place the night before? But it worked. So that's fine. But nevertheless, the Valiants go on, and they're not the same without Lou Albano, obviously.
Right.
October the 22nd, Ivan Putski and Tito Santana. And when that match was announced, and this was like a saving grace because I always liked Swede Hansen. He was damn good.
Oh, yeah. Of course he was.
He was a man mountain. But when they were building Hansen up to go against Backlund for the October 22nd show, it was like he was on fire. He's turning over stretchers. He's giving Bruno the brush. I don't want to talk to you, San Martino. I don't have any time for you. And it's like, okay, this is reeling in a little bit. But nevertheless, when they announced it, it was like, it's flat. Then they announced the Valiant brothers against Santana and Putski. Okay, they got a better, higher pitch. The fans were happier. But then Bruno against Greg Valentine was announced. That got everybody back up and running. It's like, okay, people are going to be there. If they have to lose a kidney, they don't care. They're going to be at that show. So October the 22nd, the Mongrel team, because they actually tried Tito and Pete Sanchez for maybe 2 shots on television. It's like, yeah, Tito was hotter. We love Pete, he was great with Manny Soto in 75, but Putski and Santana, and Putski had never had any kind of title in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, so this was perfect. You give Ivan Putski, throw him a bone, and now he's a tag team champion. Tito, thank you again, our amigo there, for doing the intro that he does every week with us. And we love the guy. He's one of the all-time greats. And this is what started. And he attributes, I've heard a lot of shoot interviews, to Putski. He said, he helped me a lot. He taught me things, training. He said, I'm learning training techniques like never before. Because Tito was a little bit lean in 79, and then he started to get heavier. By the time he came back, which was his birthday in 1983, for that May, let me think, it was the night of another tragedy that we won't get into, but Tito, he looked a lot bigger when he came back in 83, but this was a great start for them. Putski and the fans were happy. But here's where it gets a little bit crazy, Benny, and to our faithful, and we love you, our following that we have out there. Believe me, it means the world to us that you people are back every week. And thank you. We ain't making a dime on this. Believe me, we're here out of what you're here for, the passion of just what's gone.
The love of the game.
The love of the game. And it's like, but we're, here we are. May the 10th, that's what it was, of 83. My brain still works. So, for whatever reason, and I guess it makes some sense, Tito starts to team up with different partners, like Gorilla Monsoon at the house shows, a couple of times on television. Rene Goulet, Putski's, of course, running with Patera, who made his return, Swede Hansen, and it's like Putski's still a solid single. Let me back up 1 second, though, because this really deserves to be mentioned. November 19th of 79, Lou Albano against Jimmy Valiant. And it's like, who would have thought? No way in hell. You figured Lou would just get the usual slice and dice and run to the dressing room. He pins Jimmy Valiant.
I still don't believe that.
I got the picture. I should have put it up there of Lou hitting him with the foreign object. And that's, hits Jimmy in the throat. Then he gets the cover. And it's like, what? Lou Albano beat Jimmy? But you got to give Jimmy the consummate pro. It's like, he's going to go down south. I think he was heading for Memphis. It's like, it ain't going to hurt me. I'll put Lou over. Lou's made me a truck full of money over the years, right? Without a doubt. I'll be glad to return the favor. Very happy to do it. And that was that. Lou Albano gets over on Jimmy Valiant. So, Tito and Ivan, they do wrestle the Samoans. They wrestle them at the Garden. They were wrestling them all over the territory. So it's not like it was exclusively Tito and another partner, but it just seems strange that occurred more than a couple of times. But it makes somewhat sense when you think of the fact, like I said, Putski was a strong single. And then one time on television, it was Tito and Rene Goulet, and they were starting to get murdered because Lou gets involved. But by the new team that hit the circuit, the Samoans. And it's like, wow, the Samoans. Because they come along October the 23rd of 79, and it's like, wow, we'd never seen anything like that before. They were just incredible. And when you hear that they could walk on hot coals, I personally saw them walk into the Baltimore Civic Center in the middle of winter with no shoes. And it's like, son of a bitch. I don't even like to walk around the house with no shoes on. It's like, how the hell do you do that? But they were wild. They were tough. And, people used to be under the impression, if you never saw somebody before, that this was like their first time wrestling. No, they were the Islanders in a lot of other areas.
They had quite the resume.
Quite the resume. San Francisco. I mean, they were all over the place. They were champions in many territories. Look, they don't put the belts on anybody that just walks in off the street and says, "Oh, they look good." It's like, no, you got to have a resume. Yeah, Jerry Valiant, it was a shot in the dark, but it worked. But then again, backs up against the wall. What the hell are you going to do? So, no, these guys, Afa and Sika, of course, and they came close many times to beating Putski and Santana. But the night finally, after many tries, on April the 12th,
Yep.
I was lucky enough. I was at the Capitol Center that afternoon when they wrestled Putski and Santana. Because if you remember the Spectrum that night, Putski comes in, he's got a bandage across his forehead. The cut occurred at the Capitol Center because Putski kept like wiping his head with the ring apron. It's like, oh my God, you know how dirty that ring is and that apron. You think they call like a crew in and clean it afterwards? No, they just put that shit on a truck and just store it someplace in a warehouse till they're ready to bring it out for the next show. It's like Putski's lucky he didn't come down with malaria with an open wound wiping it on that shit. But anyway, that afternoon at the Spectrum, or at the Capitol Center, it was Bruno against Larry, of course, as the main event. So then they go to Philadelphia, and that night the belt changes hands, and Tito comes off the top rope. He kind of gets crotched in the process of the fly, and he gets rolled up and pinned, and it's a clean pin. I mean, there's no bullshit. But here's another instance. They don't have the belts. So they're waiting. Dick Worley's like, where are the belts? So it took a while it took like 10 minutes because Cal Rudman, who was a good friend with Vince McMahon, would do the color. He actually replaced Vince at the Prism with a P, not Prison, but Prism Network in Philadelphia that serviced the greater Philadelphia area. Dick Graham did the play-by-play, no relation to Superstar, but he was a big man. He was about 6'5". And he went on to have his own school, which your old buddy actually went to that school, Benny. Geez, Phil Zacco's nephew. Forgive me, I forget.
Oh, you mean Angelo?
Angelo, yeah.
He went to
he went to Dick Graham's broadcasting school. So it was like, okay, they were like yakety yak yakety because they're waiting, and then finally they bring the belts to the ring, and the Samoans, rightfully so, are holding their trophy up in the air. It's like, yeah, we won this thing. So it's like, wow. And they would show the replay of it, and you can tell it wasn't live because Vince did a voiceover for the whole replay of the match because we could tell what's what. We weren't that dumb. And it was fine, I mean, you needed to get it over. So the Samoans are a strong team. The problem was there wasn't really a lot of strong teams to go up against them that summer of 1980. They throw Dominic and Rene Goulet as probably the best challengers that they had because Putski and Santana, they were done after that. Tito, I think if I remember correctly, he left the area. I think he went back down to Texas. Putski hung around for a while. He left in the fall because he and Patera had some good battles. But there wasn't many people that could go up against the Samoans as a credible tag team. I think they put Pat Patterson and Dusty Rhodes together at the Garden, and that was nice. You like those colorful throw together teams. That was neat, but they were not going to be a credible threat to the Samoans. So merrily they go along, destroying everything in their path. And somebody gets the bright idea. The Big Shea Stadium showdown is going to come up August the 9th. Bruno and Larry in the cage. So you got to have your champion on a show like that. So it serves two purposes. It puts Pedro Morales over, and, Bob Backlund becomes the first champion to hold both titles simultaneously as Backlund and Backlund and Morales beat the Samoans that night. And it's like, wow, clean pin. Everything, looks great. The crowd goes home happy. They show everything on the replay at the TV market, and it's like, wow, this is pretty damn impressive. Bob Backlund and Pedro Morales. They had a couple of TV matches leading up to that, beating Torquemada and who the hell? It was a pretty solid team, Torquemada, and I'll think of it later. But they went over Ernie Ladd on the dark match. Believe it or not, Ernie Ladd, they beat him, Morales and Backlund. Ernie Ladd with a partner, and it's like, wow, this is impressive shit. But you knew it wasn't going to work. They said they had individual goals, and on September the 9th, which was, I just watched all of this last night, they had a tournament. As Vince said, okay, what's going to happen with the tag team title? Well, we're going to have a tournament. And sure enough, they did. And you got to applaud in the finals. Okay, Cal, stop the presses 1 second. Cal Rudman. Now, he was more, I would say, a part of the rock and wrestling connection than Lou Albano was. Yeah, Lou was friends with Cyndi Lauper, but Cal Rudman had the actual connections with MTV and the music, because before they put any of that on television, and even with NBC, somebody that was a mogul in the music industry, which Cal Rudman was, this guy, he was like the Vince McMahon of music. And they said he had this like golden finger. He could predict the hits. If Cal Rudman said that song is going to go in the top 40, it's going to go to number one, then Daddy, it's going to go to number one. So thank you, Greg. Yeah, Cal Rudman, he was very instrumental and wasn't my favorite part of the history of wrestling, but the rock and wrestling connection, he had a lot to do with that. And, with the Freebirds, when they brought them in and their music end of it. So it was like, yeah, Cal Rudman, even though Lou was definitely friends with Cyndi Lauper, let's make that plain. And it was hysterical when Lou came out and said, yeah, I wrote the words to Girls Want to Have Fun and time after time. And of course, he's in the videos. And it's like, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. It's Lou Albano's video. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, every once in a while, I'll pull it out, watch it. It's like, it's great. I mean, it's Lou.
Yep.
You would think that would be Lou, as he was a married guy, and how he'd be with the daughter. It's hysterical. You got to love it. If you haven't seen it, please.
Oh, it's a treat. You got to watch it. Yes.
It's on YouTube. It's free. Go watch Cyndi Lauper. Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And you got to wait a little bit for it. But then Lou takes over the video, obviously. And he's in a wife beater shirt, which is appropriate because he looks like he's an abusive husband. Not that I condone that. Back it up. I was the domestic violence coordinator for the city of Baltimore Police Department. So it's not condoned, but it fit the character. I mean, even wrestling is like, we don't condone going out and smashing everybody over the head with a chair, but we did it. So it's just part of the entertainment aspect. So the tournament takes place. Now, Benny, can you remember who it was? Tony Garea and Rene Goulet, who they beat in the semifinal.
You got me.
All right. I'll give everybody a couple of minutes. Now, for the Samoans, it was Dominic and Rick Martel. Not a bad team. No, not a bad team at all. So for the finals, the winner, the Samoans, and it's like you're thinking, are the Samoans going to come back and do like Tanaka and Fuji did, and now be the second team to regain the tag team title? And this was the first time you saw the Samoans wearing red trunks and like the leggings they would wear. And it was impressive. And I thought that was very good because it split the difference between the Samoans that won the belts the first time, and then even though they didn't leave the area, won the belts the second time. It was Silvana Sousa and the Demon. And this time I'm told the Demon was Jack Evans, not Tony Nero, not the Black Demon. This was just the Demon. So Tony and Rene Goulet, but there's our buddy Silvana Sousa, right? When we brought up, and what they said, he was North American title holder in Canada for a while.
NWA Canadian champion. Yep.
NWA Canadian champion. So for us in the Northeast, Silvano Sousa, that was his greatest moment of glory. He made it to the semifinals of the still at that time they had changed the name to World Wrestling Federation, but it's still part of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. So Sousa at least got in there. So Tony and Rene Goulet, and it was a cool ending to that match because what they did was they threw the Demon into the ropes. Goulet had already tagged Tony. He does a leapfrog. Of course, the Demon is going to duck to go under the legs. Tony grabs him, rolls him up, and they get the 3 count. Man, that was sharp looking. Well done. Of course, Tony, he could do anything without a doubt. And Rene Goulet as well. He was very, very talented.
Good worker. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the Samoans regained the tag team title. Nothing spectacular. 1, 2, 3. They pinned Goulet and they got the belts. So there you go. The Samoans are the tag team champions again. Now, what happened after that, to me, the semifinals must have rang somebody's bell because it's like, okay, Martel and DiNucci are a damn good team, but somebody got the right idea, Martel and Garea. And it's like, oh, daddy, you got $1 million baby on that one, without a doubt. So what happened was they put them together on television a few times and, to get things implemented. But the night of November the 8th at the Spectrum, where it began for the Samoans all the way back on April the 12th, it's going to end on November the 8th. But Tony was supposed to wrestle Samoan number 2, and Rick Martel was supposed to wrestle in a singles match. I think, Tony was going to wrestle Slaughter, and Rick was going to wrestle Samoan number 2, but they changed the card around. And it was like Martel and Garea against the Samoans. And it's like, interesting. But it's wild because Tony did a lengthy interview with Cal Rudman and Dick Graham before the match. And it almost talked like it was after the match had happened. But, Tony was careful, the consummate pro. And it was like, this is going to be a wild team without a doubt. So it's amazing that the way it happened, again, another fantastic finish, a double pin, double sunset flip. They're both pinned. They're all, all 4 men are in the ring, double pin. And Dick Worley counts and they ring the bell. And it's like, okay, what happened? Who won? And Worley's not raising anybody's hand. He's got the belts. He's got them draped over his shoulder. He said, wait for it. Just wait for it. And, everybody's in anticipation. Like, come on. Who won? And then Gary Capetta gets in the ring and makes the announcement because Dick Worley goes over, tells him. And then it's like, and new tag team champions, Tony Garea and Rick Martel. And kaboom, the place goes crazy. And it's like, wow, that was well done. And man, oh man, let me tell you, what a combination. So then they start to hit the circuit. Garea and Martel, they're all over the place. And people are just, the women are crazy for them, obviously. 2 good-looking guys.
Oh, yeah.
The men love them as athletes. A great team. High flyers, both of them. It was like, wow. I mean, they just struck gold. I don't know if that was ever the original game plan when they brought Rick Martel in. I don't think it was. But then after a while, it was like, wow, we got something here. Because Rick followed Tony, like maybe after the next taping when Tony came back, and it was like, yeah, we can do something with these 2. And then they got matching trunks, and it was like, this is a great combination, without a doubt. I'm going to go on a limb and say they may be one of the most popular face teams in the history of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, without a doubt. I mean, they were that much over.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they could work. Now, here come the Moondogs. Now, that same night, September the 9th, we are introduced to Ripper Hawkins, who would go on to become, and okay, that night he's Ripper Hawkins. He wins with a shoulder breaker. It's Moondog Rex, and it's like, okay, whatever. He's a big guy. Blah blah. Lou's managing him. Big deal. The next taping, he comes out. He's now Moondog Hawkins. It's like, okay, so now he's Moondog Hawkins. Whoop-de-fucking do. Then the next taping, he comes out with King, and they are the Moondogs. Now, of course, Moondog King was 340. He was a big man, but he had great agility. Now, they were a little awkward in the beginning, without a doubt. Somebody, again, had the bright idea, let's put these Moondogs together. Let's change Hawkins. Okay, now he's Moondog Hawkins. Let's put him together with this other guy, Sailor White, if anybody knew who Sailor White was, with the tattoos. And I don't think they had to do a thing for him. That probably was his attire. He had the long blonde hair. And it's like, yeah, put them together. Then they get the idea of giving them the bones. And that came into play, I don't know how many times. And it's like, okay. They were entertaining. Then they were eating garbage off the floor with Lou Albano. And Vince would be, are you kidding me? That's disgusting. And it's like, it was disgusting. It's like, I don't care. You got to do a lot of things to get yourself over, but that's like, no, I don't think so, Daddy. Not me. Now, that one's spotty. Okay. Moondog King, a little bit different. And they did start to get better with each passing week. Even Pat Patterson, who had taken over doing the color for Vince, it's like, Vince, they're starting to become contenders. Now, they wrestled Tony and Martel on the holiday card, December the 29th at the Garden, and they busted Tony open with the bone. Now, you usually didn't do that. You didn't see Tony Blade a whole lot over the years.
Rarely. Yeah.
You don't want to ruin this guy. I mean, come on. He looks good. What the hell are you going to do to him? But that night he took the bone in the head. Of course, they're disqualified. Tony's cut. It's like, people are ready to riot again. And it's good business, without a doubt. So, they're going about their business. But here we are again. There really isn't much of a contending team for Tony and Rick Martel. So then it was St. Patrick's Day, 1981, March 17th. And I'd never guessed this in a million years. The Moondogs win the belts. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Of course, the bone, they clobber Tony, I think it was, with the bone. Again, he didn't bleed, but nevertheless, they get the victory. And it's like, Vince is like, this is a nightmare. This has to be some kind of a nightmare. The Moondogs can't be tag team champions. And it was like, it was perfect. It worked. They come out, they got the belts in their mouth, between their teeth. And, it's like, okay, they are doing pretty good business, because when King, he had developed the big splash a la Haystacks Calhoun, because Vince even made reference to it. But King would get a running start, because remember now, he had the agility, and then he'd do the big splash. And with 340 pounds coming down with that force, it's like, yeah, it could crack ribs. You're not going to get up from that. So they're on the march. The Moondogs are tag champions. Tony and Rick are trying to get the belts back here and there. But there was a great single match. Oh, they both had intercontinental matches with Pedro Morales at the Garden, and they were both damn good battles. To me, look, Tito was one of the great sellers of all time, but I think he and Pedro Morales were like neck and neck, because Pedro would make you think that this guy needs to be carted off to the hospital, and then he would make that slow comeback, that deliberate comeback. And then when he'd start, he had enough, and he'd start pounding on the mat, and it's like he'd pound his own head. He's ready. And then kaboom, especially he and Morocco, great matches. But the match that King had with Mil Mascaras, it was the first night, April the 6th of 81, where Pat had met Slaughter in the cage match with Backlund and Stan Hansen, which was a flop. It was nothing. Forget it. Don't even look at it if you can help it. But the match with King and Mascaras, it was damn good. And King, he sold like nobody's business for Mascaras. And it was legitimate. Mascaras would apply holds. He'd get him in the surfboard, get him down on the mat, put the knee in the back. And King is screaming. And it was like, man, this is great. He got the flying tackle. And then he got the flying body press. And he put Mascaras over. But something happened. King went home. I think it was to Nova Scotia. And he couldn't get back in the country. And it's like, here's the tag team championship curse again.
There you go. Yeah.
Like, what the hell? So they thought we were dumb. So they bring in Spot. Now, after all the bullshit we had, okay, Dominic was able to pick a new partner. Chief couldn't pick a new partner when White Wolf was injured, but yet they're able to sneak Spot, sneak him under the line here, and then those two become the new Moondogs, and it's like, it's just not the same. Spot Moondog, it's just like, this ain't cutting it. It's a shame, like at some point they couldn't get King back in and just mix the three of them or mix them together. Nobody knows the difference. Just say they're the Moondogs. Because Lou brought that up a couple of times to try to justify it. Well, they're called the Moondogs, baby. Show me a contract that specifies Spot, King, Rex. It doesn't matter. It's like, Lou's bullshit, but it was good. So finally, on July 21st, Tony and Rick get the belts back. It's like, thank God. Okay. Because this Moondog combination wasn't cutting it. So, again, they're still popular. I mean, crazy popular. Because, in fact, the second annual Battle Royal that they had, the third, September the 21st of 81, the last two contestants, because at that night they were introducing everybody individually, and they'd come to the ring, and because poor SD, when he got introduced, all the heels were in the ring, and he's the first face in there. It's like, are they going to murder SD? Oh my God! So the last two people, contestants number 19 and 20, Tony Garea and Rick Martel, and the guard erupts, and they got over like they did, but Fuji and Saito had won the Battle Royal. They had been introduced on television a couple of months before, and it's like, wow, they won the third annual Madison Square Garden Battle Royal. That's big shit. Co-winners. Fuji had a busted mouth, too. That was kind of wild. So we go along to television, and they'd had a few matches before the TV match. And October the 13th of 81, the famous Rick comes flying off the top rope, and Fuji hits him with the salt. I got a beautiful picture of that. Maybe I should have given you some of them. We can always send them out another time, but It's perfect. I mean, you just see the salt, and Rick is just caught in this cloud of salt, and he sold it well, and his eyes were, you could tell from television. When you see it later, when the film is I guess the CGI or whatever they do to it, you can really see his eyes are red when you have a better, more direct picture of it. So, that was well done. They carried on for several months, bringing in Pat Patterson as guest ref in the Garden in January. But of course, Fuji and Saito, and they're beating a lot of tough tag teams. Believe it or not, Rick Martel Rick McGraw and Andre, they were a hell of a team. I mean, it's Mutt and Jeff, but that was a great title defense. So, in the meantime, here come the Strongbow brothers. The Chief returns March 30th of 82, and I was so excited because George Napolitano's good friend at that time, Frank Amato, I used to correspond with Frank, and he said, Strongbow's actually coming back. It's like, no shit, Frank. He said, yeah. They'll be at the March 30th taping. It's like, oh, man, I can't wait. Now, in Baltimore, All-Star Wrestling was shown at 11 a.m., Championship Wrestling at 4 p.m. on Saturday. I see the All-Star Wrestling taping first, and it's a tag match, Charlie Fulton and Baron Cicluna. And the Chief is coming out, and I see white feathers behind him. And right away, I'm thinking it's Wahoo. And I'm thinking, holy shit, this is great. And it's like, no, it's his brother Jules. And it's like, his brother Jules. Okay. It's like, it was okay. I'm not going to knock Jules Strongbow. I met him a few times. He's a good guy, no problems. But it's like, look, you got to know the Chief was in his later years. Now, there is a story to this. This is when Bruno and somewhat Dominic and Mike Mittman were going to try to get that IWA up and running. And they brought Johnny and Jerry in. Rumor was they were trying to get Putski and Chief. And the old man got wind of it. And that's when he brought Putski and Chief back in. But I guess Chief may have said, I don't know, because that's when Chief started to wear the singlet. Because, I mean, look, we all know when we start to get years on, we're not what we used to be in the younger years. So he wore the singlet. And, in tag matches, it's okay. You can really put over strong in a tag match, no pun intended. So they get their match at the Garden. First, they beat Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis at the Garden, and that was very impressive. And that was a hell of a team. And it's sad that Adonis and Ventura didn't get to excel as a tag team in the World Wrestling Federation. They both had single matches with Backlund. Adonis's were stellar, in my opinion. He had some great matches with Bob Backlund. At the Capitol Center, there's a lumberjack match. Man, that was just fantastic. That turned into a mini battle royal at the end. People were fighting each other. And then, but they just did, I guess they didn't have time. They did a couple of TV things to put over the Strongbows when they would go to the Garden. That was a good match. That was a foot on the rope ending. And then that was June 5th. And then June 28th, the night of the famous Backlund Snuka cage match. Again, the foot on the ropes, but with Putski as guest referee. Now, there's a purpose to this because Lou Albano made a protest. He said Putski favored the Strongbows because Fuji's foot was on the rope during the pin. And Vince said, that's the videotape is there. There is evidence that Ivan Putski, whether he did it intentionally or not, he made a bad call. So it wasn't like a stripping of the belts, but they said the title would be held up and they were going to have a TV rematch, which took place July 13th. 2 out of 3 falls this time, though. So, of course, what happens? The first minute of the first fall, both Strongbows are blinded with salt. They get a quick pin on Jules, and it's like, holy shit. And Vince has to replay it. He said, that has to be the quickest fall in the history of the Tag Team Championship, Pat. And Lou's getting in there. But the Strongbows make the comeback. They win the second fall. Jules gets the sleeper on Saito, and they win. And it's like, wow, they have a chance. But then the third fall, Chief has got the sleeper on Saito. Lou comes in, hits him from behind, drops, the ref turns around, boom, pins him, and that's it. It's like, so now Fuji and Saito become another team that regained the Tag Team Championship, even though you had that little break in between. Nevertheless, it's regaining the belt. And throughout that summer of 82, they battled the Strongbows all over every arena up and down the East Coast, and they were good matches. No complaint. Everything was very good, well done. And I'll tell you what, Tanaka used to make my hair stand up, but Saito always had that Mr. Constipation look. I wouldn't want to cross him, without a doubt. And, of course, we all know what happened with Ken Patera and Saito up in Milwaukee, and it's like,
Milwaukee, yes, sir.
It took 15 police and a couple of dogs, and somebody said they had to pull guns on him to get him under control, and I believe it. I mean, look, what you see on television, if they let loose on each other without any hesitation, they could take the abuse, but it would be like boxing. You'd have to take a couple of weeks off. But if you go up against an average man or woman, they're going to break you in half. They're going to fuck you up. It's just these men are the most incredibly trained and conditioned in the history of the world. As the opening to championship wrestling, you're looking at some of the most remarkable athletes in the world today, and it's the truth. So we go on till finally October 26th on television, as Vince again said, the final shot for the Strongbow brothers to regain the tag team title. And the Chief did that Luthez pin coming off the ropes. He goes up, boom, takes Saito down, 1, 2, 3, and they get the victory. So Strongbow brothers are the champions. This time it sticks. Chief is screaming, we can go home. And because they figured they saved face with their tribe, and it's like, hey, that's cool. I like that. And, they held the belts. But, of course, here come Afa and Sika knocking at the door. So you knew it was inevitable. And it didn't take long for them to start wrestling each other, that the Strongbows and the Samoans. But it was weird that it took all the way till March the 8th for the Samoans to get the belts. You think they would have done it a lot sooner. But it was a clean pin. No foot on the ropes, no Albano interference, no any foreign objects or anything like that. It was just 1, 2, 3. And it was like, okay, as it should be. But then the tag team curse plays in again. Sika actually broke his ankle in Baltimore on March the 12th. It was in the 8-man, it was first in Baltimore history, an 8-man tag team match. So that's where we get Samu or Samula, but Sammy comes in because he has to fill in, because it's going to take, even as tough as these men were, a broken ankle is a broken ankle. So it took Sika a little while to get himself back together. So then we start seeing these 3 Samoans in 6-man matches, and they were great. They gave us some wonderful 6-man tag team matches. So they're going along. Strongbow, Jules leaves after that May the 10th, Tito's birthday. Jules' last appearance, he got the Cobra Clutch. Slaughter put him down. Chief hung around as a single for another couple of years, and it's coming up. His final match, September 22nd of 84, against Nikolai Volkov at the Garden. So the Chief hung around. But the Samoans, they went pretty much unavenged or unchallenged. They had teams come in, but there again just wasn't any kind of solid face team to go against them. They would throw different combinations together and nothing stuck until Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson got together. And it was like, holy shit. Are you kidding me? Because Rocky was having some tremendous single battles, and he had a little feud with Slaughter in Baltimore. Rocky was the ref for a match with Backlund and Slaughter, and then he got attacked, and then they had a singles match, and then they had a cage match on October 29th in Baltimore, and I was sitting ringside for that one, baby. And man, that was a treat. So, they're together as a tag team, first black tag team in the history probably of wrestling, not just the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And the television match on November the 15th of that year, the key to this is, it was neat that they had Albano interfere and he hits the wrong man with the chair. And it was a solid oak chair. It was a Texas death match. And he splits the chair right across Afa's head. I don't know if they gimmicked the chair at all, but it's still a fucking oak chair. And you see it splinter when it hits Afa's head. And he's wearing it like a necklace as he walks back.
I remember that, yeah.
I don't think he had the blade. I think his head got split from that. And it was like, holy shit. So the Samoans kind of half-assed become faces at that point. Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas have some good title matches. And even though it takes place April 17th of 84, a little bit over the line for what we cover, but then Adonis and Murdoch beat them. And that's kind of where we ended, because it's like Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson, in my eyes, were the last tag team champions of the era that we say 1970 to 1983, that really, it stuck out prior to Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania and Cartoon Land and the Cartoon Express and all that bullshit. So Rocky and Tony were the last two to be what we call legitimate wrestling tag team champions. And what great champions they were.
Yep. No, they sure were.
That belt there, Tony and Rick Martel, that's a great shot you put up there, Benny. That's when we changed from the oval tag team belts. Tony Garea and Rick Martel were the first team to wear that style with the smaller plate, which I still like the oval belt, but that looks sharp. There's no complaining about it. It looked good.
Those guys spent a lot of time in the gym, obviously.
Oh my God. And you know what? Everything I've seen, Tony Atlas still looks like that. I mean, he's still got the cut up definition. Wonderful, wonderful, great guy. I mean, Rocky too. I met him a couple of times, down to earth, nice, easygoing guy. But Tony Atlas, it's like your long lost brother, good buddy. And I sat between him and Coco Beware one time in Indianapolis. We're riding around. Nikolai's in the front seat. We're having the time of our lives. And it was fun as it could be.
So let me make sure this is my final exam. The only 3-time champions were Tanaka and Fuji, the Wild Samoans. I have the longest reign is 370 days by the Valiants. The shortest, 15 days by Jay and Jules. That's if you don't count Backlund and Morales. And Tony was a 5-time champ with 4 partners. Fuji was a 5-time champ with 2, and Chief was a 4-time champ with 3. That sound about right?
That's it. You got it, Benny. You got it. Well, we hope everybody got something more and different out of this run, because we tried us running it. It meant, we wanted to give it to you. So now it's up there on the Playa Entertainment Network. All our shows are archived. If you have time and you want to go back, it's like, okay, I got to kill a couple of hours because we're talking, an hour and a half. And we understand people can't always catch it live, or they don't have the time. Maybe it's dinner time, whatever. But it's like, it's up there. You can go and watch it whenever. The views count if you click on it at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's important. We always say, please subscribe and to show that, hey, we have the content so that this can stay and keep up and running. Right.
And, worst case, you can always on iHeartRadio, Spotify, you can listen to it while you're driving in your car.
And WANT Radio.
And, of course, when I want you have to listen to it live. So, if you want to go the radio route, we're on the air right now. But, yeah. And
we're at WANT. Remember that?
We need Venus Flytrap, right?
Oh my God, I love KRP.
Or Herb Tarlick. We need him as the station manager.
Les Nessman only lives 25 miles from me. I've never seen him.
Wow.
Yes.
But I mean, Nikita, I think we've been listened to in like 12 or 13 different countries now on audio in, I believe, 5 continents around the world.
Very good.
Yeah. Just missing Australia and New Zealand, not Antarctica. What am I thinking?
All right.
I don't know if we're going to hit the Antarctica, but I think we need to. We'll definitely hit Australia.
We'll have to do a Mighty Joe Thunder show on that. Maybe that'll bring him in.
That is so funny because I'll give it to you in a little bit. You must be a mind reader. That's in my poem this week.
What? No kidding. No bullshit, people. I don't know what he wrote.
Yes, he did not. He does not. Totally legit. But yeah. I mean, it's one of these things. Like we said, this never gets old. I could talk about. I know you could too. We talk about the Orioles in the '60s, the great Orioles teams of the '60s. I mean, I even know like Wally Bunker was 19-5 one year. And I don't know. I mean, the guy developed arm problems later on, but even he was a great pitcher. That's McNally. They had Mike Cuellar with that screwball. And these guys picked up the ball every 4th day, not like the sissies now. They pitch, now they pitch 160 innings, and then they go on the shelf for a year and a half with Tommy John surgery. These guys, Cuellar, McNally, Pat Dobson, Palmer, they were throwing 275, 300 innings every year.
With Mike Cuellar, you had to let him stay out there because once he broke a sweat, then he was good. But sometimes
he was one of those guys. Cuellar was like one of those guys. As the game got as the innings went on, he just got better and better and tougher to hit. I remember that.
Dave Johnson's passing this week brought me to my knees.
Yes, yeah. What a great second baseman for the Orioles. I mean, they had great players. They had Boog at first. They had David at second, Mark Belanger at short, of course, Brooks at third. Even the catchers, you had Elrod and Andy Etchebarren. Now, you're talking to a kid who grew up on Long Island. I even knew the Orioles, inside and out.
Now, you would appreciate this, Benny. I just found this out. He was like a mathematician because they were telling a funny story that Dave McNally was trying to hit the corner, and he put the ball over the plate, and I think it was Mike Epstein that crushed it out of the park. So on the way back to the dugout, the guy, I forgot who was telling the story, but he said, Palmer. It was Jim Palmer. He says, "Hey, Mac, and he explained it in mathematical terms. If you aim for the center, you'll hit the corner because the mathematical." McNally's like, "Go play second base. Leave me alone," because he just gave up the home run. But it's like, yeah, I guess it makes sense. There is some type of mathematical equation that goes into that.
Yeah, Greg.
Mike Cuellar was the co-Cy Young Award winner in '69 with Denny McLain.
Right. Yeah, he was just, you gave him the guy, like you said, you gave him the ball every fourth day. Those guys, they went the distance.
And another one of those golden trades, Kurt Blefary for Mike Cuellar. Can you believe it? We didn't miss Kurt Blefary for one inning, but Mike Cuellar, he was part of the franchise for those 6 years, without a doubt.
Kurt Blefary went up with the Yankees, I believe, and they called him, I think, Clank or something like that because he just couldn't move.
Yeah, he caught Tom Phoebus's no-hitter in '68, if you can believe that.
Wow.
Or '67, yeah, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. So, folks, we hope you were entertained, but we're going to tell it again like we did in the beginning of the show. And the card is always subject to change, but next week is the Three Amigos. Tony Gurria, I almost said Larry Zbyszko, Tony Gurria, Johnny Rods, and Davey O'Hannon, all three together under one microphone. We're going to have them here.
That is going to be amazing. I wish
I'm excited.
I wish I could clone myself. Half of me could, needs to press the buttons, but the other half just wants to watch and listen because
as the Sheik used to say, I'm already excited. It's like, yeah, man, wow, this will be great.
Absolutely.
And we have more stuff planned too. Believe me, we're going to do a Heroes of Wrestling tribute when October the 10th rolls around. We'll be a day or two over it, but still. And many other great things. So we hope you've been enjoying, like the doc when we brought Dr. Frank on, and trying to give you a different aspect and keep it when it was real. Yeah.
Yeah, and where else could you get like an hour and 20 minutes of wrestling and then get 15 minutes of hot stove baseball from the 60s?
Yeah, there you go.
Right? I mean, my passion for baseball and it's pretty much neck and neck. Love them both. Still love them both.
Wrestling edges it out, but it's
I don't think when you think of in terms of like the raw emotion, like you said, what you felt when it was real. Yeah, you got to give the nod to wrestling, but not by much, but by a little bit.
It was Christmas every month when those guys came to town. And for this abused kid, they were cathartic for me every Saturday. And it was like, wow.
Yeah.
I need this. I really need it.
I agree. Well, guys, do not miss next week. We'll post it on social media.
Oh, yeah.
But, you don't want to miss this one. It's going to be good. And I will wrap this up, and I want to thank everybody again, and Nikita already did, but thank everybody, Tom Jones, Greg Barry, Jane Atkins. I know you had Chris DiCarlo earlier. Thank you all for Dougie Fisher. Thanks for participating, but I will leave you with this. As the Poet Laureate of the Playa Entertainment Network, we sat in front of our TV sets in breathless wonder, except when Joe McHugh introduced Mighty Joe Thunder. But tag team wrestling, man, that was the deal in those magical days when it was real. Arrivederci, folks.
Dos Vidões,